Hi there, it's Ros here in a very sunny and very warm Warwickshire. We are having a little bit of a intense heat wave here in the UK at the moment. Today it is a book review. It's a biography that I am reviewing, and it's the biography of Daphne du Maurier by Margaret Forster. Really big, thick tome of a book, but didn't do my thumb arthritis any good at all. Holding this, it's quite heavy. So I don't know whether it's available in paperback. Probably would be a little bit easier to read. This was published in 1993. And I'll tell you a little bit about the author first. Just read up a little bit about her. Margaret Forster was a novelist herself, and I was interested to read that she wrote Georgie Girl, which was made into that very famous film in the 60s. So that was interesting to learn. Also, she also wrote a biography of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, the poet. She's no longer with us. She died in 2016, but she wrote quite a lot. This biography of Daphne du Maurier is very, very meticulously researched. I believe she had the full agreement of Daphne du Maurier's family for all of the information in this biography, and indeed, obviously, she has had access to many letters and journals, perhaps, and also she has no doubt interviewed many of the people who knew Daphne du Maurier. So you really get the feeling that you get a very rounded view of the character of Daphne du Maurier, and it's absolutely fascinating. Are you coming to say hello or what? Come on then. Yeah. There we go. Here's my little dog. She really is in need of a haircut, especially in this warm weather. So maybe we'll get time to do that over the weekend, eh? But she's coping pretty well all the same. But I can't see her eyes at the moment. There we go. Poor Tilly. She's fine. She did get stung by a bee yesterday. It wasn't very nice, but it wasn't a very bad sting. She got over it pretty quickly. Shall I continue now? Yeah? Just want to cuddle, don't you? All right, it's a bit warm with you on me. Do you want to get off now? It's a bit hot with us. With a dog sitting on your knee. If you are interested in finding more out about the person behind books such as Rebecca, Jamaica Inn, Frenchman's Creek, Scapegoat, etc., then you will find this absolutely fascinating. However, you know that phrase, never meet your heroes. This is not a kind of hero worship book at all. It is a real warts and all book. You get a real complex view of Daphne du Maurier, you know, her with all her human idiosyncrasies and faults, whatever you like to call them. She was a complex character. And one of the things that really comes out in this book is that Daphne du Maurier had quite a struggle with her sexual identity throughout her life. As a child, she very much wanted to be a boy. When she grew into a woman, she kind of put that side of herself away. She called it the boy in the box. But later on in life, this part of her nature would come through. Now, she married and had 3 children. She also had very close relationships with other women, particularly what was possibly a sexual relationship with the actress Gertrude Lawrence. Gertrude Lawrence was very big in the 1930s and was a great friend of Noel Coward. So it's that's really very interesting in an age where homosexuality was really frowned upon. You really get the feeling that du Maurier struggled to come to terms with this part of herself, and really didn't like it and did not want to see herself in that way at all. And that's really, really fascinating. When you think in today's world, it's much more acceptable. If she had been born today, whether she had found life a bit easier in that way. But it really is that part of her is very interesting in the light of many of her novels where she writes from a male point of view and does that very well, such as The Scapegoat and My Cousin Rachel. So an interesting part of her nature, and one that comes out very strongly in this book. But it's also evident that she fell in love with her husband. She also had relationships with men. But the word bisexual would not have been a word used at that period in time. It was obviously very much a struggle she had accepting this part of her sexuality. And apart from that, also the early years is very interesting to see the relationship she had with her father, the actor and theatre manager Gerald du Maurier. Quite a intense and rather stifling relationship. And her relationship with her husband, Tommy, known as Boy Browning, who was something of a war hero and later became a royal aide and was very much in the household of then the Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip, and also later when Elizabeth became Queen. And although her relationship with Browning started off really, really well, and they had a good marriage to start with, the Second World War kind of changed that a bit, as he was obviously away for long periods of time. And after he came back from the war, their relationship became more difficult. They stayed together right through to his death, but it was obviously quite a troubled marriage in many ways. So that is explored also quite deeply. Very sad. Her husband obviously had quite difficult psychological difficulties, which at that time were not probably really addressed very well. Also, it's quite sad to read the end of Daphne du Maurier's own life, because she became very depressed towards the end of her life and reclusive, and almost, I would say, looking at it, almost agoraphobic for somebody who had travelled so much in her life. So that part, the ending parts are actually quite difficult. But what else is interesting about this book is the times at which she was writing her novels and how she felt about them. She was never particularly confident in her books. Her relationship with each of her novels is also really interesting in this book, how she felt about them and how she felt about the way each book was received. Not all of her novels were received that well by critics. She was a writer who needed to have the idea of a book come to her, and towards the end of her life, when she didn't have any more ideas, it was like without her writing she wasn't really able to live anymore, which is really sad. Another thread throughout Daphne du Maurier's life is the place where she lived. She was born in London, but after family holidays in Cornwall, where they rented a house at Foy in Cornwall, She absolutely loved Cornwall and fell in love with a house called Menabilly, which when it became available for rent, she immediately took that up and stayed there for really much of the rest of her life until she had to move out. She never ever owned it, although she could have owned a house. She had enough money to own a house, but she never wanted to leave Menabilly. And she wasn't able to buy it from the owners who wanted it back. And of course, we see the relationship with her family, with her children, very interesting. Again, part of the period she was living in, that she had more feelings towards her son than towards her daughters when they were very young, which she kind of regretted later on. But that coming from a very privileged background. She always had money in her, and she was brought up in a privileged household with servants, staff, and she had that very old-fashioned view of that having a son was much more desirable than having a daughter. Just, that kind of really leftover part of the century before, in a way. So we see so many sides of Daphne du Maurier, and of course what we love about her was her imagination and her ability to create great atmosphere in her novels, great description of place, and also that need to turn every page in the build-up of tension in her novels. But there were sort of like two sides to her, and that the side she very rarely gave interviews, but when she did give interviews, it was like she was playing a part, and she never really divulged her true inner self. Like many writers, she loved solitude. She went for long walks around about her house in Cornwall, loved to be on her own. I was pleased to see that she had West Highland Terriers, because I've had 3 West Highland Terriers in my life, and they're absolutely lovely dogs. As I say, she liked to be, part of her that I've really related to is that love of solitude and need to be alone. Particularly within her marriage, she actually liked being able to get away on her own from her husband and other people. But also, she did enjoy, when she did meet people and socialise, she actually kind of enjoyed that too. And I have that same sort of slight dichotomy, that I love being on my own. Sometimes that feeling of I don't really want to go out and see people, but when I do, I kind of enjoy it. So I think that's very much a writer's thing. But that was one thing I really did relate to her. But I think what came out for me in this biography was a very complex person who had issues that were probably not dealt with in the period that she was living in. I think now we have a much greater understanding of the complexity of things like sexual identity and all of those. Obviously still not in many countries, but the freedoms we have in that respect, it's sad to think that she didn't have that. And she had very strong opinions about things. She was I think, quite a sort of stubborn nature, but also great sort of depth of thought and investigation into human psyche. So in the light of those very intense atmospheric stories she produced, and also some of the very macabre short stories. She wrote quite a few short stories, short story collections, some of which were very odd, and some were very intense thrillers with macabre subjects. Think of The Birds and Don't Look Now, where she explores the dark and the mysterious. It's so fascinating to really look at the psychology of the person behind those stories. So, and I think those stories kind of reflect, as I think they do with all writers, parts of Daphne du Maurier's inner life. So there you go. It really is an interesting study of a very, very complex character. And I do recommend this if you are interested in seeing that often troubled psychology behind the books. Not that long ago, I did the books of Daphne du Maurier in my A to Z of Authors series. So, and I'll put a link to that up here for you. Or is it up there? I can never remember. So that's that. My next book review, I've just started reading this book, Suite Française, and it's by Irene Nemirovsky. Now, I nearly didn't start reading this because it's another book. It's the third book this year that's set in the Second World War. It's about some of the people of Paris and their experience. It is a novel, but it follows some Parisians as they flee from the Nazi invasion, and also follows some of those that stay in Paris. I believe I've only just started reading it. And I did wonder to myself, do I want to read this? In some ways it might be quite harrowing, particularly in the light of knowing that the author herself did not survive the war and she actually died out of it. So that's quite a difficult thing to, really contemplate as you're reading. But on the other hand, books like this are so important. So I thought I'd carry on with this, and it really is beautifully written. So I will be bringing you that review at some point in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. Now, next week, I've realised I've had so much on lately. I've just realised it's the summer solstice tomorrow, and I haven't even done a list of summer reads this year yet. So I think that's going to have to be my next video next week. That's it for now, I think. I hope you're staying cool wherever you are, especially if you're in the UK at the moment. And I will look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now. Yep, there you go. Tilly says goodbye too. Okay, bit hot for you, eh?